Hey guys and girls, Nathan here, just checking in, waiting for everyone. We're going to go into a global financial depression. We're going to see a depression of biblical proportions. We would see interest rates going to zero and all these sorts of things. Strangely enough, the media didn't like it and they started putting out their tarnishing, sort of disparaging sort of articles after it's always been fabulous for me. They put out there some funny articles, which is really weird. And it's like I've stepped on someone's toes in this system which do not like me, right? I've had meetings, I've been called in front of people over the years. Let's call them the men in black of different sorts of government organizations, which are like a mafia when it comes to regulation and all that sort of stuff. And they don't like speaking out. So I speak out, I say things as they are. I know bullshit when I see it. I know bullshit when I see it in the media. I don't go on TV as much nowadays. I don't go into the media that much nowadays because it's just all a big bullshit propaganda machine. People used to say, oh, Kim Jong-un, he's a bad guy, he's a terrible person, look at what he does to his people, etc. I remember a few years ago I said to my mate's wife, she said she thought I'd lost my mind because I said that Kim Jong-un, I don't know him, right? I can't say if he's a bad bloke or not, but I said there's bad people out there that are even worse than this bloke. And she looked at me like I was like, I'd lost the plot. And here we are in a world where everybody's being programmed and conditioned to accept, as they call it, a new normal. But is it a new normal or a new agenda that they are putting out? And I've seen the cracks in the system way before this came. I'm not professing I thought that they'd blame an Asian guy eating a bat in the back of China or wherever it was that caused this. But it's just a very, very interesting time. And I've got things that I'm going to talk about today. I've printed off some very important articles. I've printed off some documentation from the government. So I'm going to get into that. I do have a little bit of an agenda. I was trying to type it whilst I was coming here, basically. So, as I said, I feel like we're heading into World War III. We've been here for quite a while, but this one is not being fought with bullets and blood and all that sort of stuff. It's being fought with the minds and the brains and the information that's being fed from propaganda. And people laugh at me, people say shit, whatever. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I seek to ask questions, and I ask questions, and is critical thinking so bad? If it is, well then shoot me now. So the thing is, if we look at all the organizations out there, I saw this video, I forget actually, I think it was one of my investors, Vesna, who's one of my investors, sent me a video on YouTube the other day. It's called Monopoly. You can't search for it in YouTube. Everything's being censored and controlled. It's an Orwellian world. I encourage everybody that's watching this to, if you're using your phone or whatever, when you're using Google search, do not use Google search. Everything on there is censored and muzzled. Use a thing called DuckDuckGo. It does sound funny, DuckDuckGo, but it is like a Google which isn't censored, and you've got free content. It doesn't hide the information and have fake info in there. So use DuckDuckGo. But basically, this video that was sent through, I posted it in Birchfeed. If you're not in Birchfeed, don't be a tight ass. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. I don't ask you for a credit card. And talk about asking anyone for credit cards. In my comment sections of my videos, of my images and all that, there's all these fake phishing or whatever you call them, sort of things that are popping up. I will never ask you for cryptocurrency. I'll never ask you to spend money with me. If you are going to do business at Birchfeed, join up to it. It's birchfeed.com. Just go to the website later. I post out the information every day, just weird stuff, stuff that could help you survive or prosper during this time. I'm the most happiest guy. People say, Nathan, why are you so happy? Sydney's in a fucking lockdown, right? Sydney's in a lockdown. I'm living my life as I normally would. I'm thankful for the fact that there's not idiots on the cars justifying their existence by just driving around aimlessly. I'm thankful for the fact that, the world's still really well. We're living in a country where one person's died in a year from an illness. How many people died from suicide or from, I don't know, cancer or any of those sorts of things? We're blessed we live in this country, right? Is there an illness out there I'm not even going to get into that. It's just a good time to be alive. But there's so much opportunity, and that's what I want to talk about today, because the opportunity, it's amazing. Some people's lives are going to be turned into shit, absolute dog shit from this period in time. And, there's two sides of the spectrum, right? You can see the levers that are being pulled. You can go and understand that and go on the other side and be the kings of that, or you can just accept what you're being fed. No information out there is free. As I was saying, Vesna, one of my investor clients, sent a link called Monopoly the other day. You cannot search it. It's in Birchfeed. So you go to Birchfeed. I posted it maybe 3 or 4 days ago. It talks about the organizations out there that rule the world. I actually, years ago, I used to drink. Now I've just got my water that I got out of the car. One night I was having a few drinks, looking at things, having a chat with one of my mates about all the companies on the stock market. And I realized from doing research in every single stock market company, right, publicly listed company out there, and when people ask me about shares and stocks and all that sort of stuff, I say it's all fucking bullshit, because I don't invest my money, because it's not physical, right? These companies might be worth like $1 million, right? And then they get a first round of capital, second round of capital. Then the big hedge funds, what they do is they package them up in derivatives. They keep half the stock. Then what they do is they sell off the rest of the crumbs to the mums and dads and the investors, which everyone gets suckered into. That's called the stock market. Then there's a couple of institutions called BlackRock and Vanguard, which seem to own sort of like 10% of every company out there in the stock market. And I find it interesting, why do these companies own these businesses, right? Why are they all owned by them? Who controls these? Who are the regulators? Whose regulators are they, right? And they're the questions we need to be asking. But anyway, if we've got let's call it Pepsi and Coca-Cola, and they're both owned by the same place, right? Let's assume that let's say that Birchie owns Coca-Cola and Birchie owns Pepsi, but you don't realize that Birchie owns them. You're just buying from them. If Birchie controls those two companies, well, they're not competitors. They're the same company. And let's say that Birchie owns the same medical company and owns the same media and propaganda outlet. And let's say that Birchie owns all the other things. You'd start seeing the picture that it's a rigged game, right? That is the game we're in. We've got all this propaganda that's being pushed through these companies, which have vested interests. The media's a lie, the propaganda's a lie, the shows that you're watching, people go, oh wow, Netflix, seen this movie, it's the greatest thing. It's fucking owned by the Satanist people that are controlling us, right? And I'm not trying to get out there and get too far off track, but just be careful with the media that you're being told, because World War III is not the guns and the blood and sending troops around everywhere. It's a war on the spirits, it's a war on the mind, and the war on the people, because people are being lied to and controlled from the propaganda. So just be very careful with that. Getting into the important part of this evening, I can see there's lots of you here, and I thank you for watching me before your bedtime. So my screen's disappeared here. So first article here is, where is it? There's a few articles, so I'm just going to split them up into different parts. Because people have been messaging me and saying, interest rates are going to rise, Nathan. Aren't you scared? Didn't you say interest rates are going down to zero? Why are the interest rates going up, etc., etc.? Unfortunately, I've only got, say, 3 articles here, and I hoped to have had more articles, but I'm going to start with this one, right? So this is media out from news.com. And I've got lots of friends at news.com, so no hanging shit on the people, but they're just doing their job. But, here we are with articles from news.com. And the question I ask you, just one more thing about the media, right? Whenever you see TV, whether it's a movie, a documentary, or news, or whatever the case may be, what you're not seeing is not someone there talking about information that they've physically gone to research, things that they're questioning, things that they've gone to do their own research for. You're watching someone that's reading a fucking script, right? And as you watch someone that's reading a script out there, then who's writing that script? So once again, if you had Pepsi and Coca-Cola, what about if you had Channel 9, 7, or 10, right? Who owns all of these places, right? It's just a question, right? I'm asking for free thinking questions out there, right? So looking at these organisations, right? Interest rates will rise. This article was out on the 4th of July, 2021, 11:34. Interest rates rise will trigger skyrocketing something or other here. In the past 5 decades, the conditions underpinning the Australian mortgages and property market more broadly have been extremely varied. Between 1970 and 1990, interest rate rises were an ever-present threat to the household budgets. Of course it was, because we had inflation, because we just started raping and pillaging our currency, because our currency was created in 49 years and 11 months, right? On the 15th of August this year will be 50 years of our dollar in its existence like we have it today. That's why it's been 5 decades. It's been tripling from almost a 6% to a peak of more than 17% in 1990. The next 30 years would be almost the exact opposite. Between 1990 and 2020, the RBA slashed interest rates time and time again, with rates falling from 17.5% in January 1990 to sit at a low of just 0.1% today. Rather than lying awake at night at their parents' generation wondering a rate rise would make their financial future all the more challenging, the atmosphere for the current generation of mortgage holders has been far more relaxed. Instead of the threat of RBA raising rates and forcing households to tighten their belts in the last 3 decades, RBA slashed interest rates every 5 months on average. With the RBA cash rate now sitting at a record low of 0.1%, there is simply no more room for the cash bank to cut rates without taking the cash rate to 0% or below. They can't. Its net position is 0 at the moment, and that's before you can consider inflation. Right? If you're taking out debt at 1 or 2%, just the average inflation's worth more than that. If you were to go get a mortgage, right, and just for all those corporate watchdogs that might want to sit here and sense, Nathan, right? None of this is financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just here talking act up stuff about what's happening out there. So with it, it's impossible for them to raise interest rates. Interest rates can never go up, right? They can never go up. If you were to go and get $1 million right now and enter it in your bank account, right, where would that $1 million come from? It would come from a bank or an institution. But currency is debt. Your dollars that you use is debt. Once you understand that your money is debt, it is not money, it's not backed by anything, it is just purely debt. It is a fiat currency. Fiat is Latin for fake, right? It's fiat currency, it's fake currency. Looking at the money, if you can realize that money is just debt, then the whole paradigm changes, right? You could go and earn $1 million and pay 30 or 40% tax, right? So if you earn $1 million, you probably pay $300,000-400,000 to the extortion racket, being the tax department. And you might get left with $500,000-600,000-700,000 if you're really lucky and play your cards right. So if you were to simply go and borrow $1 million, you'd be getting $1 million net in your pocket, and you'd be paying 2 or 3% per year, so $20,000 a year. So in 15 years, you're telling me if you paid the interest right now and got your money cash in your pocket, or in 15 years you just paid a little bit every year, you're telling me you can't do a better return, plus the fact you're getting the cash flow on it? Understand how it works. Interest is more than what the rate is at the moment. But it just goes in here to say, at the same time, the RBA has also put into place yield curve control targeted at 3-year Australian government bonds, which are one of the key benchmarks for long-term funding costs. Under the policy, the RBA attempted to ensure the 3-year bond yield did not rise above 0.25% until the policy was tweaked at the figure of just 0.1%. Right? You get the picture. These articles that are coming out from the media outlets are sitting there telling us interest rates are going up, right? The banks are sitting there tweaking their interest rates. And Lynn messaged on one of my personal Facebook posts before when I started going on. She said, I want to know why the banks are pushing up the fixed rates and all those sorts of things. So I'm not a bank. I like to think how a bank works. I like to understand how the bank, smart people, and when you win a war, you understand who your enemy is. You understand how you can study the enemy and how to outsmart them. So I like to know how these things work so I can have a targeted approach on how I can make shit happen. So I will get onto that in a moment. I want to read my second article. This is from ABC. Always be communist. It's the Communist News Network of Australia. Mortgage costs to jump as interest rate rises loom, warns CBA ahead of the Reserve Bank meeting. Ooh, I'm so scared. And nicely, they put some clickbait there and give us an ad for some bank. Thank you for the bank ad in the middle of our thing. Australians could soon be paying more than $26 billion a year in extra mortgage repayments as interest rates begin to normalise. They call it normalising of an interest rate. Interest rates aren't normal because they're fake. We've never had such a global fiat debt-based Ponzi monetary system as what we have today. But anyway, it goes on to say the Reserve Bank's decision to be announced today at 2:30 will be widely watched. Not because anyone expects to move the official cash rate sitting at a record low 0.1%. That doesn't mean, however, that the Reserve's actions will leave interest rates unchanged. It's widely expected to tweak its government bond buying program, which has become a major factor pushing mortgage rates, particularly fixed rates, to record lows. Even ahead of announcement, many longer-term 3-year plus fixed-rate mortgages have been rising, with NAB, the latest bank, to edge its 2, 3, and 5-year loans as much as 0.1% higher. Oh, wow. Ooh. Interest rates have gone up by 1.1%. So if you had $1 million mortgage and your interest rate goes up by 1%, it'll be 10 grand a year. If it goes up 0.1%, that's $1,000 a year. Ooh. Right, most people's mortgages are 300 grand, 500 grand. If you're playing with interest rates at, 100 grand or 200 grand, it's like fucking $60 a year or something. How far can interest rates go up? There's a maximum of where interest rates can go up, and that is 2 25 basis increases, right? By the time the interest rates go up, we have got so much debt. The system that we have needs inflation to stay alive. It needs inflation to keep active. It cannot work from deflation. Whenever we see deflation, they have to push the money printers on, print out money to create expansion of the monetary supply. So think about it. The more money they print, the more it expands. Everything expands. The deflation is then taken away money from the system and it comes back. Any little tweak that they do now, if they push it up by 1%, just getting back to where it was 12 months ago, by 1%, the whole system will implode. People can't afford it. Everyone's got a 250 square meter block 5 minutes down the road from where my office is, paying $1.2 million for a house with no fucking eaves and it's got no yard. That's the world that we're living in. If all their mortgages went up by 1%, they'll be going bankrupt. So